Hey there, GCC Youth. So glad you're joining us. If it's your first time watching, welcome to GCC Youth Online. Now, GCC Youth is a student ministry of Gracewood Community Church, and you can find us on social media at GCC Youth Lebanon. So thank you for joining us. Last week, we began a new series called Love Hate, and tonight we're continuing that series by looking at what it means to love in a world that can sometimes be anything but loving. So I want to start by asking you a question. Have you ever felt thankful when one of your friends gave you a heads up? Even if it was kind of awkward for them? It may have been uncomfortable at first, but ultimately you know they did it because they were looking out for you. Something like, yo, you got some food in your teeth, or your fly is down, or hey, you've got some ketchup on your forehead, not really sure how that got there. Or what about this one? The person you're talking about is right behind you, like right behind you now. We've all had these moments, right? No one likes hearing that they have food on their shirt or toilet paper stuck to the bottom of their shoe, but when someone cares enough about us to look out for us and save us from future embarrassment, we're definitely grateful. Now let's think about this from the other side for a second. Have you ever felt like you should really say something to someone else, but you weren't sure how to go about saying it? Think about it. Telling your friend they have food on their face is one thing, but we all know there's bigger stuff too. Things like talking to a friend about a relationship that you don't think is good for them, confronting someone about decisions they're making lately that aren't great, or speaking up about something that you know is going to get them in trouble. And well, those feel completely different, don't they? Speaking up in situations like this is beyond difficult. Like if your brother or sister started hanging out with people who convinced them to do things that aren't right, what are you supposed to say? If your best friend's making decisions that their parents wouldn't be okay with, is it really your place to say something about it? So what do? We usually just avoid the conversation altogether, don't we? But why? Are we worried that we'll ruin a friendship or make someone mad? Maybe we're doing or have done the same things in the past, so we don't feel like we have the right to say anything. Or maybe it's just that we don't think the other person will listen. What about this? Maybe we just don't know what to say or how to say it. For some of you, this kind of situation is opposite. You have no problem telling people exactly how you see it. You're not shy about speaking up at all. The problem with that, though, is that you may not always be speaking up in a way that causes people to want to listen. If you've ever wrestled with any of this stuff, the good news is this: you're not alone. We've all been there. And can I pause right there for a second? Let's talk about feeling alone in our situations and in our struggles in life. I think that's one of the biggest lies the enemy wants us to believe, that we're alone in this, whatever this is. But you know what? You're not alone. In the Bible, it says there's nothing new under the sun, and so there's nothing that God hasn't already prepared you for and equipped you to overcome. And whatever it is you're going through, you're not alone. Someone, somewhere, has already gone through it and has came out victorious on the other side. Okay, so back to the issue of speaking up. We all know what it feels like to know that we need to say something, yet find ourselves unsure of what to say or how to say it. So what if we could learn a way to approach difficult conversations? What if there was a way to be helpful and kind when we choose to speak up? What if there was a way to have difficult conversations that end up bringing about something good? Here's the thing. No one wants to be known as a hater. Nobody wants to be seen as the I'm so amazing friend who talks about everything everyone else does wrong. Instead, we want our reputation to stand out for the right reasons, for how we love and how we treat other people. So when it comes to being a friend who looks out for others, how do we make sure we handle it the right way? In last week's video, we talked about how we should be all about love. I mean, no matter how tough you want to appear or how trendy it may seem to hate on others, who wouldn't want to have a reputation for loving people well? But if love is the goal, then how are we supposed to handle it when someone is literally doing something bad or dangerous or just plain dumb? Should we just avoid them? I mean, this seems to be the way we're supposed to behave based on how so many people respond. Are we all just supposed to be okay with everyone else's choices? Because after all, it's their life, and who are we to judge? I think deep down, we all know that isn't always the case, especially when it comes to the people closest to us. So what do? Paul actually talked about this very thing. In a letter to a church in a region called Galatia, where modern-day Turkey is now, Paul gave insight on this topic. He said, "Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. And be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself." That's found in Galatians 6:1. So what is Paul saying here? Well, he's saying that if the Galatians have any friends who share the same values but slip up and do something that is harmful, their responsibility is to help that person get back on the right track. In other words, he's saying you and I should actually go further than just saying something in a conversation. We should help someone get back to the best place they can be, on track with what God says is best. Now, there's a lot Paul isn't saying here too. He isn't saying that you're personally responsible for making sure your friends make wise choices. And he isn't saying you should put yourself in a position that sets you up for failure when you're trying to help your friends. We got to have wisdom in these conversations and situations. But the point is this: according to Paul, with humility and gentleness, you and I can help people who are struggling with making poor decisions get back on the right path. Paul continues. He says, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. So how do we help them get back on track? Well, it says it right there, by carrying each other's burdens. Think about it this way. In the world of fitness training, there's a person known as a spotter. You guys know what this is. But for those who don't, a spotter is someone who's there to help when the weight gets too heavy and the person doing the lifting is no longer able to lift the weight on their own. When that happens, the spotter carries the weight too. They carry the burden of the barbell along with the person doing the lifting. That is a perfect picture of what we're supposed to do to help people get back on the right path. Now, Paul cared deeply about the people of Galatia, which is why he wrote what he did. He knew that the most loving thing to do isn't always the easiest thing to do, but we owe it to each other to speak up. Because the truth is, we need each other. Not just to point out where others may have gotten off track, but to come alongside them and help them carry the burden of getting back to the place they should be. In other words, Jesus' followers must do more than just speak up and point out what's wrong. We've got to make ourselves available to become spotters in the lives of others, to help make right where things have gone wrong. We don't just point fingers, we share burdens. Now again, some of you might be like, listen, I'm not afraid to speak up. I don't care what anybody else thinks. And if you still feel that way, Paul snuck in 2 words that would be helpful to keep in mind when it comes to having these conversations. He said we should be gentle and that we should be humble, meaning what we say is just as important as how we say it. The loving act is to not sound judgmental, arrogant, or self-righteous. Being kind, helpful, and encouraging shows people that we want to help them out of love. Now, hard conversations aren't easy, but just avoiding a hard conversation isn't loving either. And enjoying a hard conversation by making someone look bad and feel terrible over what they've done isn't loving either. In fact, the conversation isn't really the point at all. The point is learning to ask this question: am I showing love in how I'm treating this person? You see, love pushes us to talk about difficult things, and love also pushes us to talk about those difficult things in a kind and compassionate way, because that's what love does. It shares the burden by caring about the other person who is carrying it, and not about ourselves. So what is this supposed to look like? How can you begin to put this into practice this week? Well, some of you might be thinking about a friend you need to have a conversation with right now. You might have just texted them this morning, or they might have just been on your mind lately. So what should you do? Well, if you're going to choose to be known for your love for others, then when it comes to what you say and how you help others, remember this: let love be your filter. Okay? Let love be your filter. You already know how filters work, okay? Choose a filter on Snapchat or Instagram, and no matter where you look, it changes what you see. The same is true for choosing love as a filter. No matter where you look, no matter who's in your camera, you see them differently. You won't be known for love if the way you handle hard conversations and treat others is not loving. So when it comes to helping friends who are headed in unhealthy directions, you can become known for love by filtering your words and actions through love. When we help someone make a different choice than they have been making, we do it even if it makes us feel totally awkward in the moment. And hey, I get it. That isn't easy. But when we also encourage someone else to change his or her behavior, we need to do it in a loving way, not a judgmental way. Also, not always easy. When we see someone take a step in the right direction, we should encourage them and celebrate them. Why? Because we love them. And that's what love does. So what exactly should a filter of love be applied to? Well, here's a few ideas. Let love be the filter for your involvement. When you aren't sure if you should get involved in a friend's situation, ask yourself this: what's the most loving thing I can do? Use this question as a filter for your next step. This provides a gut check for your motives and reminds you that they should be rooted in love. If the loving thing to do is to get involved to help someone get back on the right path, then you'll know to take this next step. Now, this can be tricky to figure out, so don't hesitate to contact a youth leader, your parents, or another trusted adult for help. Once you're sure the most loving thing to do is to get involved, here's the next step. Let love be the filter for your words. Ask yourself, how would I want someone to speak to me? Or what would I want him or her to say? When you filter your words through love, you'll stop and make sure you're not just throwing shade. This isn't about you looking right and them looking wrong. Instead, you'll be letting them know you're there to carry their burdens with them. Your words can spark hope, or they can cast judgment. So if you filter them through love, they'll be words that can help someone else's life get back on track. Once you have a word filter in place, it's time to take the next step, and that is, let love be the filter for your actions and reactions. If we have friends that are having a hard time keeping their lives headed in the right direction, chances are they won't just need your words, they'll need your help. You have to choose to filter your actions through love, just like you do your words. So ask yourself, how would I want someone to live out their love if I were in this situation? Would you want them to keep their phone close in case you got into a tempting situation? Would you want them to pick you up or call a ride for you if you wound up at an unhealthy party, for example? Would you want them to tell an adult or a professional because the help you need goes beyond them? Would you want them to say hard things and follow those words up with accountability and continuous conversations to help you stay on track? No matter what the situation is, if you filter your actions through love, you'll wind up being known for the way you love others, and you'll live out Paul's call to help share the burdens of other people. When we let love be our filter, we wind up sharing the burdens of those we love. Now I want you to take a second and imagine our schools, imagine our friendships, our families, and how different they would be if more people filtering their involvement in words and actions through love did just that. We would say hard things to one another, not out of judgment or hate, but out of love. We would help keep each other from regrets, from mistakes, and unnecessary heartbreaks or negative consequences. Who knows? A filter of love might just change the direction of someone else's life for the better, forever. So let's be people who let love be our filter, so that we can help those we love stay headed in the best direction for their lives.